Well, Luke, I can't begin to congratulate you for the album, Songs from the Blue Room. What an incredible reaction we've had from reviewers, how it's done in the charts. It's just been incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's nobody's more surprised than me. God, you know, it's a funny one because, you know, until a couple of years ago, I thought, well, I'll probably, you know, a solo album wasn't on the agenda really, and then of course, you know, the inevitable happened with lockdown and COVID and everything, and then I just found myself with a lot more time on my hands than I usually would have. And so I started writing, and here we are, you know. And and obviously that's coincided with Danny having this terrible injury. So the two things kind of colluded to create a gap in the kind of schedule. So it was possible. And yeah, I just thought, you know, for me it's just kind of, well, you know, it's a little side project, but the reaction to it's been amazing. So yeah, who knew? I mean, amazing.
It's fantastic. There's so many influences through there. I mean, I picked up on Killed by Cobain. There was a little bit of Wilburys, kind of Tom Petty, kind of George Harrison vibe. And throughout the album, some of the ballads are just stunning.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm a massive fan of Tom Petty and the Beatles. So it's, you know, it's not really a surprise that that's come through there. You know, I grew up listening to the Beatles. And in fact, I saw Tom Petty's first ever gig in London.
Wow.
When he opened for Nils Lofgren in 1977 or 8, and I saw his last gig at Hyde Park. So yeah, I mean, you know, it's lovely to be compared to, you know, those kind of that caliber of artists. Really, I mean, it's wonderful. I guess you know, it's just for me the whole album is really because it is a solo album, because there is no sort of prejudged sort of parameters of what it can and can't be. That gave me a lot of freedom, so I could kind of go to all those places and maybe, you know, acknowledge those influences in a less subtle way than I maybe do with Thunder, you know.
Yeah. I mean, one of the big surprises for me was the album closer. I just drove home today and I had it on 3 times in a row, and that Don't Be Long is just unbelievable. It's goosebump stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's funny actually, because people have. I think it seems to be kind of in accord with people. It's really weird though, because the song is about. I must have been on drugs when I wrote it. It's about a. I was watching this film where it's called The Astronaut's Wife, and I just thought, imagine it was the other way around, and your wife was an astronaut. If you bear that in mind, next time you listen to the lyrics, you'll get it.
Oh, I'll put it on straight after this. And of course, there's the upbeat stuff. Even the track, the title opener, immediately is just it just makes you feel good throughout the whole album. You have a smile on your face, and it's one of those albums you can come home and had a really shit day, put it on, glass of wine, or you can drive around and feel good listening to it right through. Errol Flynn's another one that captures me. Another great track.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's that's like it's the most country I think I've ever got, and it's just you know, it's something that we all have to go through. It's getting older, you know, and how you look at the world and how the world sees you, and you know, kind of, I suppose, embracing the fact that there's bugger all you can do about it. So you might as well kind of enjoy it and try and get old gracefully, you know.
Well, there's me talking about getting old gracefully. I bought this at the Hammersmith show, and I don't fit into it anymore. It's almost like a spray tan.
Yeah, I've got a lot of clothes like that. I've got my real wardrobe and my fantasy wardrobe.
Yeah, I have to apply a liberal amount of baby oil to get this one on now, but it still fits. So writing, obviously, you did say, and I read it in a couple of press releases, that it gave you that freedom to go anywhere. But growing up, what were these influences from growing up in music you heard as a kid and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, obviously in the 60s, I was born in 1960, so my folks were quite young, and they were both art teachers, so it was a kind of quite a sort of I suppose bohemian upbringing, in the sense that musically, you know, they just had the Beatles, Dylan, the Stones, the Kinks. They had all of that on all the time. So obviously I absorbed that probably without even thinking about it. and I'm still a massive fan of all those bands. And then being a teenager in the 70s over here was just brilliant, because you had all these brilliant bands across all genres, great rock bands like Zeppelin and The Who, really good pop acts like all the glam rock bands, David Bowie and Sweet, and great soul music, all the Philadelphia sounds, Stevie Wonder making those great albums. So it was an amazing time to be a fan of music, really. And I guess all of that stuff has sort of permeated me in some way. And now it's very funny. I mean, I'm 63 now, and I'm still hoping that I'm going to hear something new that challenges those great records, from the 70s and 60s. But I struggle. I struggle to find anything that is that of that quality. There's lots of stuff around that's okay, but there's very little that's got that level of kind of excellence. And so as a consequence, most of the music I listen to tends to still be from that era. Maybe that's something that we all do as we get older. We have an era that we're particularly fond of, and that's the thing. But no, I do listen to new music as well. I skip to the radio stations, but it's just frustrating. There's so much. A lot of the new music today is very formulaic, and it's very genre specific. It's metal. It must be metal. It must be pop. It must. I can't think that way. For me, music is all music, and you write it and create it as you feel it, and you don't worry about all those sort of preperceptions. It's got to be dressed in this, or it's got to be done this way, or it's got to have a long guitar solo. I mean, all those things are great, but music is surely about artistic and individual freedom. It's not about conforming to what other people's perceptions of what you should be are. It's about doing what you feel.
Yeah, and this album's a prime example of that. You've got the slow ballads, but you've also got those kind of different. And again, not pigeonholing it. There's genres in there. You pick up a little bit of Americana. There's a bit of a soul funk to one of the tracks, and it's just that freedom of enjoying. I agree with you. There's so many bands that, is this down to the fact that so many people can write and record music in their bedroom now that they're flooding the market with what's already been done?
I think that's a large part of the reason. Is that I think when my generation of musicians came through, you couldn't make a record unless a record company gave you the money to go and do it, because studios were so expensive. Now, digital technology has allowed people, to make records in their bedroom, and I think that's a great thing. But the problem is that as you say, it floods the market with very, very kind of maybe ill-considered and stuff that isn't ready, and the whole relationship between artists and record company that existed when I was a kid. You'd get signed on a sort of 3-album deal, and they might be investing in your talent. Most of the time they were. So they might try and put you with the right producer and kind of nurture your talent. And now it's like labels don't have that anymore. All they do is have people that look at your amount of followers on social media and offer a very quick deal based on that, because everything's got to be instant. So those things of all kind of, or the other thing as well, advertising is the other thing that's killing music at the radio level. I think is that so many radio stations have got very, very, very safe playlists now because they're terrified of losing advertisers, and so what you get is this kind of inherent blandness that runs through the industry. And then I also find as well, a lot of the people that are working in the industry over here are not people from a musical background. They're people that fancy being in the music business because it's, glamorous, or they perceive it to be a certain thing. But, both major deals that I've been involved with in my life, both times with Terraplane going back before Thunder, we were signed by a guy called Muff Winwood, who was Steve Winwood's brother, who was in Spencer Davis. And when we signed to EMI with Thunder, we were signed by a guy called Nick Gatfield, and Nick was a sax player in Dexys Midnight Runners. So musicians were involved at that level in labels, and now they're more likely to come across an accountant or a lawyer, and having a conversation. You would never put a musician in charge of a law practice, so why the fuck would you put a lawyer in charge of a record company? Making sense to me.
Very good point. You said then just about instant music becoming instant. Songs from a Blue Room, were some of these old songs you'd sat on?
3 of them, Errol Flynn, Nobody Cares, and Killed by Cobain all got written probably around when I was maybe writing Rip It Up and the one after that. Oh, for fuck's sake.
63. You did say you're 63. It's rolling.
Yeah, it's got, yeah, exactly. Now, but All the Right Noises. So in and around writing those two albums, you know, those three songs, I can't remember where exactly, but they all popped up in that period. And I just thought, well, they don't really feel like Thunder tunes to me, so I'll put them to one side. Now, without any kind of idea what I was going to do with them, really. And then, as I said, you know, when COVID hit and I had loads of time on my hands, I was writing. It was in the middle of Dopamine and that, and I was writing a lot. And once again, a few of these songs just popped out, and I thought, well, I'm not sure about that. And actually, it's my wife's fault because she stuck her head around the door of the studio one day and said, they sound really good with you singing. You should do something with them, you know. And I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe. And I started thinking about it as a possibility. And then the next thing you know, it's an album, you know. So, yeah, here we are.
And, of course, Australia Post has done me well. It arrived the other day.
Ah, splendid. Look at that.
My blue vine. I'm scared to open it at the moment. So I'm going to have to probably go online and buy the CD.
There you go. Good man.
I just don't like opening these things when they look so nice.
Yeah.
So, you just said about All the Right Noises and some of the tracks came from there. When I last interviewed Danny, he said that All the Right Noises was actually a time when you were going through a bit of angst and anger with things that were going on in the world with Brexit and things like that. And then these three tracks have popped out when possibly you'd had a cup of tea and a biscuit and a better day.
Yeah, maybe. I think that there was an interesting contrast. The last two Thunder albums have both been about the world outside, if you like. You know, obviously with All the Right Noises, lots of stuff about Brexit and populism on the rise and Trump and all those kind of things. And with Dopamine, lots of stuff concerned with social media and how that affects us all. And so I think with this album, it's a lot less heavy lyrically. It's much more kind of, you know, a bit more inward looking and not as concerned by, you know, the world outside. And yeah, I think that kind of, it suits the vibe of the music as well. The music's kind of a lot more relaxed, as you said earlier. And I think, yeah, it just felt like the right kind of way to go with it, really.
Yeah, definitely. So with sort of Danny with his feet up, recovering at the moment and having a bit of time off, is there any chance that you're going to be able to get some time to tour this album?
Well, I'm looking at that now. I'm sort of having those conversations now. I mean, initially I had no desire to sort of take it on the road at all, to be honest with you, because it was literally just a one-off sort of project.
Yeah.
I think the reaction to it has sort of made me rethink that slightly. So, yeah, I'm hoping that I'll be able to pull some UK shows together for at some point in the not too distant future. And whether I go anywhere else with it, I don't know. We'll have to see. So I think it's yet to be released in a few other territories. So we'll see. It'd be nice. To you know, it seems a bit of a kind of waste of time to make the album and then not go out and do some shows, really. So yeah, no, if I can do it the right way. And do it with the musicians that I want to do it with and everything, yeah, then great. You know, I'd love to do it.
Yeah. One song that I was listening to in the car today that I think would go really well if you translated it into French was Nobody Cares.
Oh, right.
It's got that kind of flowing, going down the river, drinking a glass of wine. If that was a French lyric, they're number one in France.
It's funny because that tune, to me, I know what you're saying about France. To me, it's a bit further Eastern Europe than that. It gives me a sort of Greek or a Russian kind of as well. So, and I think because it's in waltz time, which makes it that kind of helps make it a bit more French as well. Yeah, it's an odd song. That I have no idea where that one came from. None at all. It just happened one day. I thought, that's quite interesting. I didn't know what it was at all. And I sort of parked the idea for a few months, and I came back to it. I thought, this is really interesting. I should sort of develop this a little bit. And yeah, it's the only actual song on the album where I'm moaning about something, or I'm moaning about the mundanity of most people's social media. But yeah, as a tune, certainly, I think it doesn't sound in any way English. No. It's definitely more Eastern Europe. So yeah, French. That's not a bad idea. Yeah,
you crack the whole of Europe. You've got to learn Russian now as well. If you don't mind, just touch, because I've waited so long to chat to you, touch on a few other little bits and bobs of what you've done over your career, over your 43 years. Obviously, Australia 2017, what a journey that was. 4 shows, 5 days in and out. You guys must have been shattered.
Yeah, we had to go straight on the UK tour pretty much. I think there was maybe 2-3 days off in between as well. So, yeah, it took me a while to get up at that one.
I got to see you in Perth. What a fantastic to see you guys close up when I was there at Donington when you made your debut. Folkestone was my little neck of the woods. Used to catch you at the Leescliffe Hall. Hammersmith on the 20 Years and Out tour. And then to see you in that small venue at Capitol was just, and to see Soundcheck was just incredible.
Yeah, it's funny because you go right around the other side of the world, and we saw nothing. I mean, we literally we had one day off. We had a day off when we arrived. So we had a day off in Sydney, and then I think we had a day off in. It was mainly travel. We had a day off in Brisbane as well, and it was. So we saw a little bit of Brisbane. We saw Sydney Harbour. Did that really quick. Did the tourist thing, and then the rest of it we're on a plane. So we didn't really see anything. Which is a bit of a shame, because you go all that distance. It would have been nice to sort of have a week off there and have a good investigate. But of course, we didn't get the chance. So shame. But it was amazing to get down there after all those years. And hopefully we'll get back at some point because it's. I just think next time we do it, hopefully maybe we can stop in Japan on the way or something, or
nice.
Just break up the journey slightly.
Oh, they'd love you over there as well. Of course, you literally got home 2 weeks later and then recorded Stage, the live album in Cardiff.
That's right. Yeah, that was on that tour. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. God, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah. Yes, that was a very busy period. That live album actually. The reason we did it in Cardiff as opposed to London was because. When the band stopped last time, and we got back together again to tour with Journey and Whitesnake, when we played at the Motor Point in Cardiff, the reaction of the audience after the first song was stupendous, and the audience was making so much noise that we couldn't actually play anything for a couple of minutes. We just stood there going, bloody hell, what's all this about? And that was an amazing sort of, because we'd been away a few years, I think we'd forgotten. And this sort of outpouring of love, which was amazing. And I think that's why when we decided we were going to do Stage, we thought, well, let's not do it in London, because that's the obvious place to do it. Let's do it in Cardiff. Why not? Because the audience there have always been amazing. So there you go. And it's a great room, that as well. Motor Point Arenas, the arena shows, sometimes the sound can be a bit iffy, but the sound in there is really good. That was the other reason we thought it'd be a good place to do it as well.
Yeah, the album came out. It's one of my favourite live albums in my collection of all live albums. It's superb. Really, really good. Obviously, something I need to talk to you about, the Union. Massive fan of the Union. I got to interview Pete a couple of years ago. 3 wonderful albums. Siren Song, still regularly played. And 3 of my favourite tracks you ever wrote were Cut the Line, Black Gold, and If I Could Make You Mine. Still sit so high on my playlists. What a wonderful time that was as well.
Yeah, that was, funny, very funny that. When literally Thunder had stopped, I went out to watch a band at a little pub gig because I wanted to have a look at, I heard rumours about this band, so I went along and I just ran into Pete. I didn't know he was going to be there. And we got chatting and I said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm not a great deal at the minute. Thunder stopped. Don't know. I said, what are you up to? He said, don't know. So I said, well, after a couple of weeks, I said, why don't we make an album? He said, yeah, great. So we did. And that was how the first Union album came around. And it was another one where, the reaction to it was very good. I think we enjoyed the process, and that turned into another 2 albums. And it's 3 albums in 4 years. It's quite an output. I love working with Pete. It was very, working with somebody who's obviously a lot younger than me was really good, I think, for me, in that he brought stuff to the party. His taste in music, surprising, although he started off listening to Nirvana and grunge bands, his taste in music was actually a lot more kind of Neil Young, Tom Waits, lots of stuff like that. So yes, it was, and he was kind of very into acoustic guitar and those kind of things and singer-songwriter stuff. So yeah, it was an interesting thing to do, and a wonderful singer, a great writer, and a great guy. So yeah, that was a nice thing to do for a few years.
especially when 4 years, 3 albums, and the quality of the songs didn't diminish across any of those albums for such a great output of music in that short period of time. It was all wonderful stuff.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think it was obviously being with Thunder, being like the only writer in Thunder, really. It's good sometimes to step away from that and write with other people, because it's a lot less fucking work for a start, and it's nice to bounce ideas. Because you approach things when you're working with somebody else in a different way than you would if you were left on your own. So, and like I said, you take something out of that, and I think coming out of the Union and going back to Thunder, I think the stuff that I took from the Union back into Thunder. I'm not quite sure what exactly, but you certainly, whenever you work with somebody, you always learn something, and hopefully, it was the same for me.
Yeah, it was interesting you saying that you were writing during a couple of the Thunder albums, and then pulled some songs that you thought, well, yeah, I don't think they're going to be right for that. I interviewed Andrew Farris from In Excess a couple of years ago, and he did the same. He's now gone fully into country, like proper deep country music.
Yeah,
and he wrote a song during the 1987 when they were writing Kick, their biggest album to date, and he took it to the guys, and they all went, yeah, nah. And it became his first single that was completely, all them years ago, completely off the wall. And he said, I don't know where it came from. Just popped in my head, wrote it down, took it to the guys, they went, nah. And here we are 20 odd years later, and he's churning out now country music.
Oh, well, good for him. I think it's difficult, isn't it? I did feel sorry for those guys. They were a great band, and obviously when Michael Hutchins died, you just think, is it going to go? Because he was so much the kind of the public face of the band. But they're really, really great rock and roll band. I mean, Australia does throw up really good bands, and AC/DC. I mean, Midnight Oil. There's a few that have kind of stepped out and done it internationally, and it must be, which is a difficult thing in itself. I mean, it's hard enough for European acts to get make any kind of impression in the UK. But from Australia, that's amazing, So yeah, go on.
I think I remember a lot of the time reading Kerrang and Thunder were in there all the time, and the Screaming Jets came in, and for them to impact on Kerrang at that period of time, and then I think they ended up moving to London for a bit to record.
Well, they opened for us. They opened for us in '92 on the Laughing on Judgment Day tour, because we heard them and thought they were really good, and and they were great, great fun, and we did a couple of shows with them in the States as well at some point.
Okay,
yeah, they were great.
They got a new album out this year. Dave, he's just left he's been with the Angels for 12 years.
Okay.
Dave Gleason, he's been fronting them as well as doing Screaming Jets, so he's been doing double shows everywhere. So he's out there. Listen, Luke, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I've got 3 regular questions I'd love to finish with.
Okay.
The first, my restaurant question. If you could invite 3 musicians, past or present, dead or alive, to join you for dinner for a couple of hours, who would you have join you?
That's a tough one. Jimi Hendrix, probably, because he was the reason I first picked up the guitar. Probably Pete Townsend. It's really funny. I've been on stage with Roger Daltrey a few times, and I've never met Pete Townsend. It's really annoying.
Oh, really?
Stood next to him once, waiting for somebody to introduce me, but nobody did. I thought, oh, fuck it. So Pete Townsend, because I think anybody that could write Quadrophenia and Tommy is definitely worth spending time. And the other one would probably be Donald Fagen from Steely Dan.
Oh, cool.
So I'm a massive Steely Dan fan, and they kind of, I just think they're a very interesting band. They're kind of like the musical kind of, whereas kind of the Beach Boys were like the voice of kind of West Coast kind of teenage whatever. The Steely Dan are kind of much more East Coast sort of collegiate kind of, kind of pseudo-intellectual, pseudo-jazz. They're a stand on lots and lots of borders. They've got feet in lots of areas. And I always find their lyrics really interesting, because half the time I don't know what they're about. So they're one of my favourite bands, and unbelievably great musicianship. I went to a show actually last week over here, and it was James Burton, who was Elvis's guitar player for a while. And he's getting on now, bless him. He's got to be mid-80s. And he had a show at the Palladium with various kind of guest musicians, and Skunk Baxter, who was the guitar player in Steely Dan, was one of the house band. So I went along just to watch him.
Wow.
Yeah, he was also the guitar player in the Doobie Brothers, who are another of my favourite bands. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we've had them over here recently, the Doobies.
Really? Yeah.
They're still out and about, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think it was the 50th anniversary tour they were on last
yeah.
Crazy. What was the last album you listened to? In the world of playlists, we get sucked into them. But,
the last album I listened to, I can tell you, actually. Let me just look at my phone. Let's have a look. Hunky Dory, David Bowie. There you go.
Ah, cool. I'm going to put that on tonight now with a glass of wine.
Yeah,
I love that question because it reminds me what's out there, and you forget there's so many great albums.
Yeah.
I'll stick on. Well, I'll save the easiest for last, Luke. If you could be credited with writing any song ever written, what song would you choose?
See, I'm torn here between artistic and financial.
I've already got the rights for Happy Birthday. You can't have that one.
Yeah. No, I think probably. I think probably Bridge Over Troubled Water, because it's such a fantastic song. I mean, it's a peerless piece of music. It's an unbelievably beautiful song, and it's incredibly moving, and obviously made a lot of money. So there you go.
That is a great song. That's not been on my list before. I've got a little playlist I add them to on Spotify, all the answers from everyone's from my interviews. So I'll be sticking that on the end. Luke, thanks ever so much for your time. We wish you all the best with this, especially for if you do manage to get out on the road with it. I'm sure it's going to be well received live, because these tracks are just going to work so well on the stage.
Thank you.
That's awesome. And while I have got you, and I know we did see a video the other day of Danny, please send our regards on behalf of us and probably all the Thunder fans who haven't got a chance to say it yet. We wish him all the best. It's great to see him up and about, and we can't wait to see you boys all back in the studio.
Yeah, thank you. I shall pass that on.
Thanks, mate. Take care. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of the English summer.
Lovely. Take care. Bye.
Cheers, Luke. Ta-da.